All right, so for a second, I want you to consider the following scenario. You've spent the past couple of weeks following up with a prospect. Now you finally got them to book in a call. You are hyped, you are pumped. Not only that, but you jump on this call and things are going pretty smoothly, right? They're answering your questions, you're following that script. And what you have been dreaming about, the idea of signing this prospect at the end of the call, of getting payment from them at the end of the call, could potentially turn into reality. You are pumped, you are psyched going into the pitch of your price. You go ahead and you pitch that price, $3,700 a month, you say. And the client who's been all fun and games and laughing at your jokes and excited about this opportunity and moving forward, and has told you about their plan of taking their business to the next level in 2021, all of a sudden they start posing a few questions and they start throwing at you a few different objections. They need some time to think it over. They need to speak to their partner about it. Potentially even the classic, do you have any case studies I could see? Oh no, when you hear that question, your heart stops for a minute. You don't know how to respond, you stumble upon your words, you go blank, and things start to turn downhill. At the end of the call, they tell you they'll reach back out. They never do, and they just ghost you. That is a way too common outcome of a call for the typical agency owner. I've seen it time and time again, even with my case, right? And it hurts. It hurts when you cannot deal with some of the stuff that may be thrown at you on a call. We're talking about possible objections that may be thrown at you. We're also talking about different tests that the client could have you take, right? When it comes to behaviors on which they may be judging whether they want to work with you or not. And there's absolutely no avoiding it. There's no point in landing a ton of meetings, in automating your outreach, which I talk about a lot on this channel, if you cannot close these meetings. And so what I want to do in this video is I want to share with you some proven strategies that you can use to make sure you can close pretty much any client on a call by understanding the different outcomes that a call could have and how to react to them appropriately, so you can pretty much close any client on a call. Now, before we jump on my computer and I walk you through this free live step-by-step training, why should you actually listen? Because if you're anything like me, I don't want to waste my time. So if you are new to my channel, let me tell you a bit about myself. My name is Jaime and I run one of the leading e-commerce agencies in the world, where we take e-commerce brands and we transform them into market leaders. Now, I've been able to go from $0 to $50,000 a month profit with my agency in just 2 years. And in this channel, what I'm doing is I'm sharing with you the lessons that I've learned. Not some lessons I've learned by reading books, although books are incredibly valuable and I love them to bits, right? Not some lessons I've learned from watching a bunch of YouTube videos and regurgitating that stuff to you guys. No, lessons that I've learned from battle testing these concepts by being in the trenches every single day with my agency and by scaling my agency. So that is a bit about me. Very excited for this training, and without further ado, let's go right into it. So without further ado, mastering the art of closing clients on the call. Let's get right into it. So here's what we're going to be covering. First things first is dealing with a no, what your immediate response should be to that answer. The next one is getting a yes, how to proceed by reading the room. And the final one is preparing a follow-up. Why you should chase the no, which is a concept that I've coined and that I'm gonna be explaining at the end of this video in moments of indecisiveness. Getting a no. Now, here's how you want to deal with the no. The first thing that you need to understand is that resistance is a good sign. Just because they're saying no when you pitch your price or they show a bit of resistance, it doesn't mean that you cannot still sign the client. In fact, right? I've always found that the clients who actually show resistance tend to be the clients I end up signing. This is incredibly important, right? When you start out, you're almost scared of facing any resistance. And what that means for me at this point is that they're actually interested, right? For example, just to give you a bit of an example, I just moved into my new place, right? For a few months, I was looking for a new place. Now, the places that I didn't want to stay at, right, or that I wasn't considering, I would never ask a question. I would just pop in, right? The real estate agent would show me around. Pretty much would never ask a question, right? It was only the places that I cared about and that I actually found interesting that I would actually inquire a bit about, right? I would be a bit of a nuance. I would essentially pick apart various aspects, and I was pretty picky, right? I would ask about a bunch of things about, security, about, I don't know, the AC, about, lighting, etc., right? Just because I was actually interested. So resistance is not something that you should be scared of or run away from. Resistance is actually good, right? It means that they're considering it. When a client, you need to be a bit worried when a client is too smiley or just saying yes to everything, agreeing to everything, right? That probably means that they want to get rid of you, right? And at the end of that call, you probably hear something like, "I'll reach back out and let you know what our answer should be." Now, the great thing is in this video, I'm going to share with you how you want to deal with that, but that is something that you want to keep in mind. Now, the next thing that you want to keep in mind is you want to dig deeper, right? It is actually weird to get a solid no. Oftentimes it'll be followed up with the reason why they're saying no to your offer. But if it's not followed up by the reason, then you want to dig deeper and understand where the no is rooted, right? Is it the pricing? Is it the terms that you've discussed on the call? Do they not believe in the service, right? You want to get an understanding as to what they're saying no to, because there's so many different components that they could be saying no to. Maybe, it's not within their budget, or maybe it's a lot more than they expected. Maybe they have the cash, right, to pay for that, like that. Okay, but the no is mainly rooted in the lack of confidence that they have towards you, because maybe you haven't, positioned yourself as an authority in that call. Okay, or maybe the no is all about the service. Maybe the terms that you've discussed on that call is not the terms that they expected. So there's a few reasons why they could be saying no. Right. The next thing is valuable questions. These are the questions that you want to ask to dig deeper. Right. Questions like, what exactly is holding you back? Okay, what is preventing you from moving forward today? Aside from money, what is holding you back? This last question I really like, because you're essentially assuming that they don't have the money, and people hate when you assume, right? In fact, one of the things that I tell my students is never assume, especially on email copy, especially when it's your first point of contact with that person. You never want to assume that they're leaving money on the table, or that they're not doing something without having the actual facts, right? For example, I've seen people claim that they're not making a Forex return, right? The problem with that is that sometimes just to get the win over you, they'll say something like, actually, we're making a 5x or a 6x return, right? And it's essentially a very easy way of winning that argument, but essentially it really rubs people the wrong way. Now, the reason why I like to do that at the end of the call is because you've already given a ton of value, right? You've already given quite a lot from your side. And now when you do that, you're essentially assuming that they cannot afford your services, right? Essentially, you're baiting them into saying, well, I actually can afford it, right? The money's not the problem, right? Which, in that case, then you've gotten one possible objection to your service out of the way. So now you know that the money is not the problem, right? Now you know that something else is the problem, and they may actually tell you that what that something else is right after that. So those are some of the valuable questions to ask if you get a straight up no. Having said that, let's move on to getting a yes, which is the answer that we all want to hear. But the problem that I find is that oftentimes agency owners mess the yes more than the no. Now, this is a bit weird to wrap your head around, but I've seen this time and time again. Essentially, prospects will give you green light but aren't fully bought in will test your operating procedures. I've seen this happen time and time again as well, right? Oftentimes, a prospect who's not fully bought in, they will say yes, or they'll give you what it seems like a green light, but what they're truly doing is they're testing your operating procedures. You're testing how you would react to that answer, to see how tight you guys have everything, right? To also get a bit of an idea as to how experienced you are and whether you are accustomed to getting a yes and a green light from prospects. Now, the good thing is you're watching this video, okay? And so you should be ready when that time comes, when you're getting a yes from a prospect. Now, here's how you want to deal with that. You want to read the room, okay? First is you want to understand who you're speaking to. You may be either speaking to the CEO or the founder of that company, or, for example, and this is particularly common in the e-commerce space, you may be speaking to the CMO or the marketing department. Now, depending on the person you're speaking to, you're going to have to frame things in a very different manner. You may also expect different outcomes. However, before we get into that, and before we get into the differences of each situation, first things first, the first thing that you want to do is you want to create a frictionless process. It is incredibly important that you have your invoice loaded and ready to send before you jump on that call. Okay, so you always want to assume that they're going to pay on that first call. I've literally had it where my payment process, it maybe took around 3-4 minutes to load, and basically the client got cold feet and they backed out. Right? What you need to understand is that we as humans like to procrastinate. Okay, we like to procrastinate on things that we know are going to move us forward. Maybe either because of the fear or simply because we are wired to survive and not to thrive. Okay, I've seen this time and time again with both clients and students, right? Maybe you watching this video, you know that you have to take action. You know that you actually have to start your agency and start taking action and moving towards your goals. But there's a kind of like a chimp mind inside your brain, right? That prevents you from moving forward, that tells you, hey, we're just chilling here, right? Let me keep on watching YouTube videos, right? Instead of taking action and then starting your agency and getting to that 10K month mark, right? With your agency, or 20K or 30K, whatever you want to achieve with your agency. So having said that, essentially going back to this point, right? You want to make sure that you create a frictionless process. Now, the next thing is decision-making power. So, and this goes back to the first point, right? If you're speaking to the CMO, despite it being a clear yes from their side, they might not actually be able to pay that invoice on the call. As for example, they might have an accounting team or an accounts payable department. This is something that a lot of people don't actually consider, right? Maybe you've heard the typical advice in sales that you need to get payment on the call. And if you don't get payment on the call, then it's very black and white, right? It's a yes or a no. And if you don't get payment on the call, then that is deal done. Now, in most cases, and if you're speaking to a person who can pay the invoice on the call, right, that definitely makes sense. Okay, it is definitely true that if you don't get payment from their side on that call, and they're actually able to pay that invoice, something's fishy, right? And you want to make sure that you actually get commitment from them using different strategies that I'll cover in just a bit. But if you're speaking to a CMO, you need to understand that they might not have that decision-making power, and that understanding of business structure and that non-neediness from your side, because you understand that, hey, you don't want to really push them because they've told you, I'm super interested in this, right? But I just can't pay the invoice, right? And that's not an excuse, or that's not an objection. That is just pure facts in most cases where you're speaking to the CMO, right? Now, here is the little thing. Here's the little caveat that you want to make sure you implement if that is the case. But before I get into it, if you're enjoying this video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you made that gray, ugly looking like button turn into a very sexy blue, just like the one on screen. YouTube just finds it extremely sexy when you do that, and I'd really appreciate it. So with that being said, let's get back into the video. Here is how you want to proceed with payment: by understanding who you're speaking to and by reading the room. If you're speaking to the CMO, what you want to make sure you do is you want to get the email from the accounts payable department or whoever's going to be paying that invoice. Okay, you want to go ahead and send it over to that person, and you want to give them a bit of context. For example, you want to say, hey, this is Jaime from X Media, right? And this is the invoice for our Facebook ad services. I just spoke to Lauren, and she told me that you were the right person to send this over to. Thank you so much, right? You want to send that over. Now, the next thing that you want to do is incredibly important, and this applies for the whole sales process, right? You want to make sure that at each stage of the sales process, you're getting commitment and buying from them. You never want to, for example, let someone off the hook, right? You never want to let someone say yes to your service, right, and consider it a deal done, and then try to do the whole deal over email. That is going to lead to some good old ghosting. They're pretty much just going to ghost you, and not only that, but you're going to follow up with them thinking that you actually have hopes of closing this client. What you want to make sure you do is you don't want to let someone walk without some commitment and some buying from their side. Okay, so the buying that you can get from a CMO is a bit different to a CEO, because a CEO, if they can pay on the call, the buying is just purely paying the invoice, right? If a CMO cannot pay on the call, or someone who is in the marketing department, or someone who's not the CEO or the founder and doesn't have that decision-making power, you want to make sure that you get them to sign the contract on the call. Okay, very briefly, you should have a very simple contract, right? And you want to make sure that you share your screen and you walk them through that contract on the call. The next thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you pencil in the next touch point you're going to have with them. For me, for example, that is a kickoff session, right? On that kickoff session, my team and their team, we get crystal clear on the plan of attack that we're going to be following. We walk them through a few communication touch points, etc., etc. So that is what you want to do in that case. To wrap this point up, I always find it very humorous and very funny when, especially beginner agency owners, they get super hyped over a yes, right? They might hop off a call and they might be super hyped because the client has said yes, right? And that was definitely me when I started out, don't get me wrong. But here's the thing, at this point with my agency and in business, I'm pretty skeptic. And for me, until I've launched the ads for my clients, I don't even consider that a deal done, right? I've even had the very odd case where a client paid the invoice on the call, right? And a few days later, she asked for a refund. Essentially, it wasn't really our fault. There's really nothing that I could have done apart from obviously locking in that kickoff session, which is also the reason why I'm sharing it with you guys in this training. What I cover in this YouTube channel is not something that I read on a book or something that I saw on another YouTube video. It's literally stuff that I've lived and that I've gone through myself. Okay, so what I could have done in that case is I could have locked in that kickoff session. And so anything that she wasn't clear on, I would have just had that call. There's always something about that face-to-face interaction and being able to speak to a human, okay? But essentially, going back to that point, for me, until we've launched the Facebook ads, it's not deal done, right? So a yes is literally the furthest from that. Now, the next thing you want to consider is, if it's obviously the CEO founder, just like I said, you want to send the invoice straight away to their email. If for whatever reason they struggle to pay the invoice, I'm talking about the full amount, and it's a resounding yes, then you want to make sure you either offer a 10% deposit, okay, or they can pay in 2 installments. Now, this is very weird. I've never had a client not be able to pay the invoice in full, especially if it's e-commerce brand. They should be very cash flow healthy. Maybe potentially if you're working with info products or local businesses, I could maybe see this happening. Still, I think it's a bit of a not scenario. But if that's the case, you want to be agile. The final thing that you want to do is you want to make sure that you get them to book in that kickoff session, okay? So the final thing I want to cover is they need more time. What is this whole thing about? If you haven't already, you will hear this quite a lot. I need to speak to my business partner, husband, wife, colleague, dog, cat about this, right? I need to speak to someone about this. This is basically a way of diffusing responsibility from their side, looking for a scapegoat almost, right? To take the blame on them not moving forward, okay? And this, in most cases, is utter bullshit, okay? It's just a way of delaying the no, a way of diffusing responsibility. So here's how you want to deal with that. This method is an incredibly effective method, is what I call the before it comes up method, okay? And what you want to do is you want to get rid of common objections. For example, I need to speak to my husband about this or my business partner about this at the end of the call. You want to get rid of those at the start. So you want to imagine yourself, you got a baseball bat, right? And the objection comes and you've already batted it out away from sight, right? So it doesn't really come up at the end of the call. That is essentially what you're doing here with the before it comes up method, okay? How does this apply? Before you start the call, and to get rid of this possible objection coming up, right? You want to ask, by the way, Lauren, right? Is there anyone who should be on this call? Who would need to hear about this content, about this, or who should be on this demo call to potentially make a decision further down the line, okay? If she says no, great. She cannot pull up the excuse at the end of the call. If she says yes, let's try to get them on the call, right? They should definitely be on this call. If we cannot get them on the call for whatever reason, the way I'm going to structure that sales call is not going to be the same way that I'm going to structure it if I'm speaking to the person who has to make the decision, okay? I'm going to use that first call to build rapport, okay? To have a bit of a casual conversation, right? To understand where they're currently at, to diagnose their business, right? Maybe add a bit of value to increase our authority, but I'm not going to get into the juicy details of the pricing or the process that we follow to get them results. Why? Because you don't want to reveal the whole, your whole deck of cards. Why? Because you still have that follow-up call, which is incredibly vital that you make. Okay? If you essentially show all your cards, what's going to happen is Lauren is going to relay this information to the person who's actually making the decision. And here's the thing. There's no one who's going to tell your agency story and who's going to walk them through what your agency actually does better than you are. In fact, they're going to do a pretty poor job at it. Okay, and so this person who needs to make a decision and who's a vital component of the decision-making process is gonna hear about your agency from Lauren's side, and it's not gonna be very effective. Okay, so you want to make sure you don't show all your cards and you keep those that interest and you spark that interest for that follow-up call. Obviously, at that point, you will also want to pencil in that follow-up call, ideally in 24 hours to 48 hours. Okay. Now, if it's a genuine excuse, and kind of going back to what I just said, you want to make sure you pencil in a touch point 24 hours to 48 hours later. Now, this should be negotiated, all right? That 24 hours to 48 hours later should not be taken lightly. If it goes over that, I've found that the deal is pretty much over, okay? They've looked into other options. They've gotten cold feet, okay? Maybe, and this happens a lot, okay? Their priorities have moved, right? Now that you don't really care about Facebook ads, now the next thing they care about is, I don't know, partner up with influencers on TikTok, okay? Things move very fast in the business space, so you want to make sure that you see time as what it is, which is friction, okay? The more time that passes during the first time you spoke to them and the second time, that is going to hurt you and the less of a chance you have of signing that client, okay? So you want to make sure you negotiate over timing, because a lot of prospects will push you, a week back. You don't want to take that. You don't want to do that, okay? And the final thing is chasing the no. This is a term that I use quite a lot. This is a term that I've coined and I use quite a lot, and it's incredibly effective. What it is in the case where they don't want to pencil in the follow-up, right? In case they don't want to do what you indicate, that would actually mean that they are committed. They, it's buying from their side. For example, if you're speaking to a CMO and they don't want to sign the contract, right? Or they don't want to book in the kickoff session, that should be red hot flags, okay? What most agency owners do in those cases is they just kind of play along because they don't want to go against the client. They think that will cost them the deal, right? Maybe they think that will come off as rude, right? And so the client says, actually, I'll reach back over email, and you say, sure. No, God. Okay, I expect your reply, and what happens is they don't, and then you're wasting a ton of time, and you feel like an idiot, right? What you want to do in those cases is, number one, it's just a way for them to either delay the no, avoid the responsibility that they have right now, okay, of giving you a yes or a no, or almost enjoy the feeling of being in the position of authority and power that they've got over you, where you could maybe say yes and you'd be happy, or say a no and then make you feel sad, right? What do we want to do instead as agency owners is we want to understand our value, okay? and you want to chase the no. What you want to do instead is you want to be very upfront with them. You might tell them, hey, look, the reason why it's important for me to pencil in that touch point is because number one, I don't really enjoy going back and forth on email. And number two, it tells me that you're actually considering this. You're actually serious about this, right? And look, it's completely fine if you are not really considering this. It may not be a good fit, but if you know that already, I would really appreciate if you gave me a no right now instead of delaying it, because that way I'm not wasting your time or my time following up with you, and we can just focus on the people that are ready to move forward. Now that is a complete different answer. Here's the thing, a lot of people, and I completely feel you because this was the case when I started out, a lot of people think that this may turn a possible yes, right? They were just about to say yes, right? But now maybe you were too rude or you asked for the no and they're going to say no, right? Now that's never going to happen. And I'm sorry to tell you this, I'm sorry to burst your bubble if that's the case, but that's never gonna happen. On the flip side, the great thing about this strategy is that it could actually turn a indecisiveness, right? Maybe yes, maybe this is the right candidate, right? Into a let's do this, right? Because all of a sudden you've shown that authority, you've shown that abundance, the fact that you don't really need them, right? That makes people very attracted to you. That's, that applies for business, that applies for relationships, for friendships, pretty much everything in life. Okay? When you're in abundance and you don't really need this to happen, that is when it will be easiest to sign the client. And the next thing that this will do is it will turn a delayed no or a ghosting into a no right now, into a no on the call, which is absolutely blissful, right? A lot of people, especially if you're just starting out, you don't understand how painful it is to follow up with a prospect who is just ghosting you. It's a clear no from them, right? You've had a call with them, especially if you had a call with them that is particularly painful, right? And they're just ghosting you and they're not giving you an answer, right? And you're just, you keep playing the game of adding value and, showing authority, whatever you're doing, right? It's a no from them, right? So why not get that no on that call? It's going to save you a ton of time. Honestly, following up after a call is probably one of the biggest wasters of time in the world, right? If they had the call, right? Maybe they watched a video on it from you, right? They watched the video on it, maybe you had a call, maybe you had a follow-up call and they're ghosting you, you are done, right? So why not get the no on that call? Push for the no and it might actually just end up as a yes. So, my friends, that is that. Obviously, there's handling objections through pricing, but that is something that I cover with my one-to-one mentorship students. Now, on that topic, I never really advertise it at all. I never do any marketing for it. You'll never hear me talk about it because I just let the students do the talking. I let my 10K club do the talking. We're already 13 people who have gone through my mentorship and have gone from 0 to 10K plus a month. We've got people who are making 23K, 25K a month. Okay, and the funny thing is most of these people have done that in 3 to 4 months. Okay, so when I tell you that there is a fast lane to success when it comes to SMA, there's not a get rich quick, right? But when I tell you there's a fast lane, which is through automations, which is through having an incredible sales funnel, which is through having an irresistible offer, which is through understanding how to get results for clients and keeping them around for a long time, right? And on the flip side, there's also a slow lane, which involves sending out cold emails one after the other, which involves signing clients but not being able to get them results and having them leave after a few months. When I tell you there's a fast lane, I'm not lying to you, right? There is a fast lane to get results with your social media marketing agency, and that's what I'm doing with my one-to-one mentorship. Now, the bad news is that the upcoming weeks are going to be the last weeks for my one-to-one mentorship. I'm not going to be taking any mentorship students anymore. I honestly love seeing the impact and the results that is generating. There's something quite powerful about seeing someone grow their income to a point where they can afford to change their lifestyle, take care of their loved ones, change themselves as a human and level up in life so they can think about their bigger impact in the world. However, financially, it doesn't really make much sense for me. And it also takes quite a bit of time, that one-to-one interaction. I'm at a point with my agency where I can do that. It's pretty much automated and I've got an incredible team, but sadly, it is coming to an end. The reason why I say that is because if you've been considering about applying for my mentorship to see if you'd be a good fit, then I recommend you do that as soon as possible. Obviously, it's not for everyone, and so if you're watching this video and you're not considering it, that is completely fine. I'm not forcing you into it. Also, it is paid, so it's not for everyone. And also, I'm pretty selective with the people I do it in because it's a very one-to-one interaction. I'm literally walking the journey with you to 10K a month plus in record-breaking time. So if that is of interest, then I recommend you check out the link in the description. And with that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this free training. If you did, again, I'd really appreciate if you dropped a massive thumbs up down below. Also, leave down below in the comments any questions you may have on this video, and I'll be sure to check those out if you have enjoyed my free Facebook Mastermind. It's an incredible community full of like-minded people looking to scale their agency, level up in life, and it's honestly an ever-growing community, and we're looking to build that into the best digital marketing community in 2021. There's already like 2,500, 2,600 members, so if you want to apply and you want to be part of that incredible community, you can go ahead and check out the link in the description. You can go ahead and click on that, and if you're a good fit, we will let you in. And as always, hope everything's going well in your journey, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.